If there's any questions, then please feel welcome to.
Bhante, I have a question about the sutta. Other, why does the sutta only single out 2 of the 4 right efforts?
I don't know. I guess one answer that could be given when you mention 2, the other 2 are implied. But sometimes one finds actually in the Anguttara Nikaya, you'll find like a sutta on the threes might mention 3 factors of some group, and then when you come to the 4s, you'll find 4 factors. Then when you come to the 5s, you find all of those factors from the 3s and the 4s are absorbed into the 5s, and then a 5th factor is added. So in the chapter on the 4s, you'll find the 4 right efforts are mentioned.
Thank you. Another question is, in this section, it says that most of the suttas are given to the lay persons, right? So,
yeah.
And no meditation or concentration is mentioned. Has the Buddha ever taught the lay people to cultivate meditation, concentration? Is it a dispensable part for a lay person?
I think the Buddha didn't expect all lay people to practice meditation. So he would teach people according to their, let's say, according to their aspirations and abilities. So like ordinary, like lay people who are involved with supporting a large family, they wouldn't have the conditions, the suitable conditions, especially for cultivating concentration type of meditation. But it's not the case that the Buddha completely bypasses meditation for lay people, since what he teaches would be that he gives wisdom teachings for lay people. In fact, it's like one of the 4 qualities or 5 qualities that should be acquired by a lay person. Well, the 5 qualities would be faith, virtuous conduct, generosity, and then wisdom. And sometimes learning is added, learning and wisdom. And then this wisdom is given as the wisdom that sees into the arising and passing away of things. And so that wisdom could only develop out of a meditation practice. But it doesn't, it seems it doesn't depend upon a samadhi meditation, but it develops out of insight meditation. And then there are suttas that come, we actually see them in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Sixes, where the Buddha teaches he doesn't specifically say this is for lay people, not for monks, but he's speaking to Mahanama, who's a lay person, and he teaches the 6 recollections. The recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, generosity, sila, and the devas. Yeah, and then there are suttas where the Buddha says that he's addressing a group of lay people, among them who are headed by Anathapindika, and he says it's not enough for you just to provide the monastics with their requisites and to observe the silas, but from time to time you should go into retreat and then develop the higher mind. I think this is in the Book of Fives. It could be in the Book of Fives. And then if a lay person wants to follow not just the practices that will lead to a heavenly rebirth, but is aiming to reach any of the stages of liberation, from stream entry on up, then they have to develop meditation. Except those who hear the teaching directly from the Buddha and achieve realization right on the spot. But nowadays we don't have the Buddha in our midst, so we can't fall back on that. And then also there are suttas in the chapter Sangyutta. Wow, it's starting to pour outside. That's snow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, this is in the chapter on the Noble Eightfold Path, Sangyutta Nikaya, chapter 45, where the Buddha says, whether it's a lay person or one gone forth, what I praise is right practice, not wrong practice. And then he says, what is wrong practice? Wrong view, wrong intention, to wrong samadhi. And then what is right practice? Right view, right intention, up to samma samadhi, right concentration. So here he's speaking for a layperson to develop all of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, including right mindfulness, right concentration.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, please.
Bhante, you had mentioned a few words like Sanditika, directly visible,
Yeah.
Dhamma, and Akalika.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned 4 or 5 of them. Where can I find them in the text somewhere? Or if you can just repeat those characteristics of Dhamma.
Actually, one finds them all over. You find it in this sutta itself.
All of them? Only Sanditika,
No,
right?
no.
Yeah.
The Brahman begins, he says, it's said, Sanditiko, directly visible Dhamma. Then he goes on and says, in what way is the Dhamma directly visible? Then he brings in the others. Akaliko is like immediately effective. Ehipasiko, to be inviting investigation or inviting inspection. Opanayako, applicable. Pachatang vedi tabbo, to be realized by the wise for themselves.
Okay. Thanks, Bhante.
Yeah, this is like,
Oh, here. This
yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the
is the
standard,
non-English version, right?
the most
Yeah.
common recitation item for in Buddhist devotion. Like any devotional book, if you look, say, online, if you search for, there's a little book called The Mirror of the Dhamma, compiled by Narada, Venerable Narada, and Venerable Kassapa, back in Sri Lanka in the 1940s. And it has all of these very basic recitation items. The recollection of the Buddha, iti piso bhagava, recollection of the Dhamma, swakato bhagavata dhammo, recollection of the Sangha.
Thanks, Bhante.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question about the bait and the hooks.
The bait.
And the hooks passage, because I thought that was, I don't know, interesting. Because I thought, well, if it's bad to take the bait, the pleasures, I'm in the arts, and so the arts are very much based on appreciating the world by
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
senses.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're drawing something, you love that thing.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, I'm wondering what kind of limits are there really on what is it, you know, is it so bad to enjoy, you know,
Yeah.
the sensory pleasures of this kind of very miraculous kind of world we're in?
The sensory pleasures of this.
It's kind of a miraculous world that we're
Miraculous
in, you know,
world,
the
yeah.
environment, and so it's not good to take the bait, but
Yeah.
it's good to do acts of merit. So,
Yeah.
is merit giving other people the bait? You know,
I see. That's a
mean,
good question.
You're helping them enjoy the world. So if you want to kind of say a few words about the limits of what's appropriate to enjoy, or I mean, I know what you mean, but
I think that there would be, I would have to say that there would be innocent pleasures, and I would, in my opinion, actually higher types of artistic pleasure I would not categorize that under taking the bait. And I would say that that sutta that the Buddha spoke was addressed to monks who are aiming for liberation, and so it's really intended to discourage getting attached to the objects that stimulate the sensual desire or sensual craving. But I'd say that there are what I call innocent or even uplifting types of enjoyment through the senses that come through the aesthetic enjoyment. I have to say also that maybe it's one of the negative sides of Theravada Buddhism compared to other forms of Buddhism is having this negative attitude towards, even sometimes towards aesthetic enjoyment. So it leads to a kind of deadening of the capacity for aesthetic enjoyment. Would you agree? Use the
I think
microphone.
the arts are a way to sensitize you to subtleties in your environment and in other people.
Yeah.
How they react to everything. So I think that they're a way of being communal with other people
Yeah.
by sharing
Yeah.
these kind of uplifting, as you say,
Yeah.
experiences.
Did you want to add something, Stephen, who's a...
Well, I mean, of course, creating art for others is a type of giving.
Yeah.
It's usually considered a positive thing by artists, at least. It's not It's sort of leading them to ruin. But I think there really has to be a distinction made between carnal pleasure and fine art.
Definitely, I agree with that, yeah.
But is the artist really creating, I want to give this beautiful masterpiece? No, they're just expressing themselves. I mean, I would
It's not done, or maybe it's not done primarily with the intention of giving pleasure to others, but more with the intention of expressing oneself or creating something beautiful.
Well, I think some art as well is about expressing a message, you know. For example, like Pablo Picasso's Guernica, like that has a clear message behind it.
I don't think that most great art is expressing
No,
a
I
message.
don't think most
Yeah.
great art, but certainly there is a portion.
Some, but I say a pretty small amount proportionally.
Van Gogh was expressing too much. He was off his rocker, kind of.
It's more like expressing
His
a
own
vision of the world
Yeah.
more than a message that one could put into a neat formula.
Yes. And I think there also needs to be sort of a distinction between like art that's done purely hedonistically for like one's own carnal pleasures, as Stephen said, and one that serves some sort of higher purpose or delivers a message or is just an act of giving, even if it isn't intended initially as giving.
Yeah, I would say maybe if something purporting to be art just stimulates what's called carnal pleasure, then it's not really art.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it is art, I suppose.
But anyway, this could open up a big debate going on.
It's a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any other questions? Okay, if no... Oh, yeah.
In that one sutta, I think it was in the Anguttara Nikaya, it said about sila and doing things for merit. But then the bait, attaching to the bait or the worldly, would it be like doing things expecting something in return? And this is dangerous for bhikkhus also, attaching to the outcome, in other words?
Of course, the ideal is to do the good deed, the meritorious deed, without expecting anything in return.
And that is the bait,
But that's not brought in relation to the bait. The sutta on the bait speaks about that one doesn't delight in any of the 6 objects of the senses. That if one delights in them, rejoices in them, and clings to them, then one is called one who has swallowed Mara's bait. And if one doesn't delight in them, does not rejoice in them, does not cling to them, then one is said to be one who is freed from Mara's bait, who has broken Mara's hook.
But it's this clinging to the outcome, the satisfaction, the happiness, the joy, the merit, or whatever, that we're doing things?
Yeah, I mean, one could deduct or deduce that or infer that, but it's not explicitly said in that sutta. Oh, okay.
Bhante, is it paradoxical that the Buddha's teaching is about non-self, but at the end of one's old age, one should do meritorious deeds in order to have a better life in the future and have a better conditions to practice Dhamma, but in the long run, so that one can eliminate the 5 aggregates without any remainder. I mean, there's 2 issues. One is the non-self, it's not owning, and the other one is the practice eventually is to get rid of the...
Yeah, but one has to establish a suitable platform from which to get rid of the clinging to self. So for that one needs to acquire the merits that will provide the suitable conditions. And even if one doesn't want to get rid of the clinging to self, and just if one is not aspiring to reach liberation, but just wants to encounter happiness in future lives, one still should cultivate merit, because it's merit that provides the conditions for that. So the teaching is addressed to people at different levels, it uses like different principles for people at different levels.
Bhante, just where it said, the person living to 120 and hadn't done anything good or wholesome.
Yeah.
How could one live, even if you live for 20
I
years?
think some of these, I have to say, these settings for the sutta are almost like setups in order to give the chance for the Buddha to say something. I don't know that one could really take that literally.
How could you not?
Particularly Brahmins who were brought up in the teachings of Brahmanism, that would have also emphasized a lot of the ethical teachings which are identical with those of Buddhism.
And then they said, give us something that'll last a long time.
Well, they will conduce to our welfare for a long time. You don't have much time left at 120. Okay, we'll have to end for the day.